Any business that uses information technology resources should be concerned with cybersecurity. Financial institutions, banks, insurance companies, healthcare providers, cloud organizations that offer software as a service all have to comply with compliance requirements and prove due diligence in protecting sensitive data like personally identifiable information for their clients and customers. My foundation in cybersecurity started in the United States Air Force, and NIST has consistently been the starting point when building a cybersecurity program and conducting cybersecurity risk assessments. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, offers a wealth of guidance and documentation for helping organizations protect their information security. Documents like the NIST SP 853 dives into security and privacy controls for information systems and organizations. Risk assessment policy and procedures address the controls in the risk assessment family that are implemented within systems and organizations. The risk management strategy is an important factor in establishing policies and procedures. Policies and procedures contribute to security and privacy assurance. Security and privacy program policies and procedures at the organizational level are preferable. These procedures describe how the policies or controls are implemented and can be directed at the individual or role that is the object of the procedure. Procedures may be documented in system security and privacy plans. Events that may precipitate an update to risk assessment policy and procedures include assessment or audit findings, security incidents or breaches, or changes in laws, executive orders, directives, regulations, policies, standards, and guidelines. The NIST SP 853 risk assessment families include controls for policy and procedures, security categorization, impact level prioritization, risk assessment, supply chain risk assessment, use of all source intelligence, dynamic threat awareness, and predictive cyber analytics. This also details vulnerability monitoring and scanning, update vulnerabilities to be scanned, breadth and depth of coverage, discoverable information, privileged access, automated trend analysis, review historic audit logs, and concludes with correlating scanning information, the public disclosure program, technical surveillance countermeasures survey, risk response, privacy impact assessments, and criticality analysis. NIST does offer additional supplemental documentation to include assessment procedures such as risk assessment, security assessment, access control, audit and accountability, awareness and training, configuration management, identification and authentication, incident and response, maintenance, media protection, personnel security, physical protection, system and communications protection, and system information and integrity. NIST specifies that the risk assessment should concentrate on the information security program plan, risk assessment policy, threat awareness program documentation, procedures for the threat awareness program, security planning policy and procedures, procedures addressing organizational assessments of risk, threat hunting program documentation, procedures for the threat hunting program, risk assessment results relevant to threat awareness, threat hunting results, list or other documentation on the cross-organization, information sharing capability, security plan, risk assessment and results and reviews, contingency planning policy, contingency plan, incident response policy, and the incident response plan. Every organization with digital infrastructure should carry out cybersecurity risk assessments to identify and mitigate potential vulnerabilities. A complete analysis of the assets, who has access to these assets, the potential vulnerabilities associated, and the solutions for these problems are consolidated during the cybersecurity risk assessment process. Security assessment delves into security assessment policy, procedures addressing penetration testing, security planning, security assessment plan, the penetration test report, a security assessment report, security assessment evidence, other relevant documents or records. The frequency to conduct penetration testing is defined. Automated scanning tools are identified, and ad hoc tests using subject matter experts are identified in this process. In addition to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency also offers quality guidance for cyber risk and vulnerability assessments. The CISA conducts risk and vulnerability assessments at federal agencies, private organizations, state, local, tribal, and territorial governments that identify vulnerabilities that adversaries could potentially exploit to compromise security controls. At the conclusion of these assessments, the CISA provides the customer with the data along with a tailored risk analysis and ways they can improve their cybersecurity. The CISA analyzes and maps to the MITRE attack framework the findings from risk and vulnerability assessments conducted each fiscal year. Fiscal year reports provide an analysis of a sample attack path a cyber threat actor could take to compromise an organization with weaknesses that are representative of those CISA observed in the fiscal year's assessment. Infographics of assessments mapped to the MITRE framework each fiscal year break out the most successful techniques for each tactic documented and includes the success rate percentage for each tactic and technique. CISA encourages network administrators and IT professionals to review the analysis and infographics and apply the recommended defensive strategies to protect against the observed tactics and techniques. When performing a cybersecurity risk assessment, the idea is to use industry standards and industry best practices in order to achieve the desired goals. If there's a known database vulnerability that's already been identified by CISA and highlighted in the MITRE attack, why wouldn't your business use that information to potentially avoid the same type of attack on your network? The CISA offers a guide to getting started with a cybersecurity risk assessment. This process includes 6 steps. Step 1, identify and document network asset vulnerabilities. Step 2, identify and use sources of cyber threat intelligence. Step 3, identify and document internal and external threat. Step 4, identify potential mission impact. Step 5, use threats, vulnerabilities, likelihoods, and impacts to determine risk. And step 6, identify and prioritize risk responses. In the first step, to identify and document network asset vulnerabilities, the business should be characterizing or inventorying network components and infrastructure, including hardware, software, interfaces, and vendor access and services to help determine possible threats. To identify and use sources of cyber threat intelligence in step 2, some common threats include, but are not limited to, unauthorized access to secure information, the misuse of data by an authorized user, and weaknesses in organizational security controls. Identifying and documenting internal and external threats during step 3, recognize that threats are not exclusively external to organizations, as internal sources can greatly affect cyber posture as well, including insider threats. Some common indicators of a cyber breach include web server log entries that show the usage of a vulnerability scanner, a threat from a group stating that a cyber attack is imminent, such as ransomware, unusual user activity, unexpected user account lockouts, alerts from malware or antivirus software, unusual deviation from typical network traffic flows, and configuration changes that cannot be tracked to known updates. Step 4 zooms in on identifying potential mission impacts. This assessment will consider impacts to all system dependencies and shared resources should a cyber incident occur. The business will use threats, vulnerabilities, likelihoods, and impacts to determine risk during step 5. There are several things to consider when quantifying risk levels, including what assumptions qualify the measurements of high, medium, and low. Are terms such as risk and threat defined precisely and consistently? What assets, devices, or systems are at risk in the high risk scenario? What are the cyber threats posed to those assets, devices, and systems? What controls are in place at each tier to mitigate the extent of cyber breaches? What level of readiness has IT personnel achieved to respond to a cyber incident? To conclude the cybersecurity risk assessment, step 6 includes identifying and prioritizing risk responses. A crucial factor in a cyber risk assessment is knowing what responses are available to counter the different cyber threats. Maintaining and updating a list of identified personnel and groups with their contact information is vital to expedite the response time after a cyber incident. This is where having an effective incident response plan available is essential to your business. How will your business respond to various types of cyber incidents? Who will you contact in the case of a security breach? Will you contact the CEO, the CISO, digital forensics analysts, network administrators? There must be a definitive plan in order to be the most efficient in responding to any threats or attacks on your network and ensure your business is operating securely.